In this layer, layer 3, I'm setting up the actual scenes now. This setup will give me everything I need to begin creative writing in the next layer. Now, when I say there's no writing yet, there's no creative writing yet. I'm not writing any prose yet. I'm writing more of a detailed list. But I personally consider this writing. It's writing in a different but much needed format. I'm not worried about the style, grammar, or spelling itself here. I spell everything however I want. I don't even look back. I just get the outline down on paper. I'm only focused on what action is taking place inside the one scene, what clues are being found, what the detectives are doing. I'm focused on only the actions needed to move the story forward in this one scene. Most new authors are anxious to get into writing the story. So let me focus for a minute on the benefits of layer 3. Any clues that won't work show up in this list writing process. That prevents me from writing 2 chapters or more before I figure that out. For example, I may not figure out that the initial clues will be a problem until I'm adding another suspect and/or his or her motivation. That all comes out in this layer, in this process. This layout layer also allows new and/or better ideas to formulate. It also gives me ideas on foreshadowing clues that I can add before I start the actual writing. This process also allows for a red herring to occur naturally, to sort of pop up. It can even throw up another suspect or more clues. To a beginner, this may seem like too much boring list building, but this layer is creative, but in a different way. My mind is creating in this layer. I'm getting more ideas about adding depth or more mystery into the scenes that I haven't written yet. This layer, in my humble opinion, is very productive and fruitful. This layer is also like an insurance policy that I won't spend a month writing a story that in the end won't work because the clues won't line up or the suspect is too obvious. All my scenes begin with the same 3 lines: POV, which stands for point of view, time and location, and purpose and clues. The point of view I don't choose at this early stage. I leave that blank for right now. The strategy involved here is that this little template keeps me focused and my writing tight enough to only move the story along. Let's do a quick review. I start with the basic crime mystery outline. I add additional suspects and their motivations. I then lay in the subplot chronology into the same crime outline. Each of these additions will expand the outline, as you can see in the scrolling outline here. By the end of adding all these elements into the same outline, it leaves me with an outline of the entire story, which is now laid out in basic chronological order and divided into a 4-part structure. Using that now evolved plot line, if I can call it that, I now begin to design scenes around telling the story, adding the action, dripping the clues, dripping background information, and foreshadowing the ultimate crime and culprit. What I find is that in this layer, everything that ultimately won't work will show up. It's 1000% easier to change an outline than it is to throw away 2 chapters or more and then go back to the drawing board. On the right side of this slide is the template in action. It's simple and straight to the point. I just want to start out with an example of a scene outline so you can follow the next few slides as I explain each part of the template and how it serves the ultimate story. Let's break down the template for the scenes. Point of view. Unless you are writing in first person, you will need to know whose point of view the scene is being written in. This is important so there is no head hopping. Although I personally allow one quick head hop at the end of each scene if I need it. I don't choose my point of view for a scene at this point. I wait until I begin actually writing. This allows one character to claim the scene as his or her own. This is part of that creative flexibility I promised was contained in my writing system. Time. I've enumerated 3 reasons to keep track of time. There are more, but these are the most important in my humble opinion. By tracking time, I find it gives a natural break for chapters later on in the process. It also helps when making sure your story is balanced. At some point, only Superman can accomplish so much in one day. By tracking time, it also provides opportunities to naturally lay in subplots, which oftentimes takes place on a character's personal time. And often solving crimes by a certain time is part of the pressure and suspense of the novel. It's much easier to track time than to have to pick out timings from a long list of already written chapters. Location is important for a few reasons. It helps to set the scene in stone, so to speak. The location can say a lot about a person's wealth or poverty or station in life, and it can help you as the author add realism into the scene. Any specific reference to location will come in a later layer, but choosing a location is important right from the get-go. It also allows me to find some pictures that I can use as references when it's time to describe the scene. By choosing a location, you will also avoid the white room syndrome. And for anyone who hasn't heard that term yet, that is where the author forgets about the location and the reader is envisioning the people in a white room sitting at a white table. I added purpose into my template because when I was beginning to write fiction, every experienced author I listened to said the same thing. Everything in the story has to move the story along. There shouldn't be any dawdling or meandering around in the scenes. There's no free associative thinking or speaking or saying anything else that pops into your head. Everything in the scene is there for only that one purpose, to move the story along. Now, Nora Roberts can free associate because she can get away with it. James Patterson can go on and on about whatever he wants to and get away with it. But new authors, no. As soon as you bore the reader, they're going to be on to the next book, probably by one of those authors I just mentioned. So this guardrail, focusing on purpose, this helps me keep my writing tight. Clues. This one is self-explanatory. Any mystery, thriller, or police procedural will be about telling the story through clues and other evidence found along the way. The detectives will also analyze things and throw out their theories of where the evidence and interviews are leading them. Here is a tip that helped me as a beginner. It may be helpful to highlight in yellow all the clues as you drop them. This way, if you can't remember if you dropped one or two, it's easy enough to scan through the scenes to find where they are if they're all highlighted in yellow. We will also cover later on in the course how to use keywords to keep track of your clues, which also gives you a way to see them in a bird's eye view of the story. Divide and conquer. With the 3-line template, working from my detailed chronology and focusing on one part of the story at a time, this allows me to divide and conquer. It breaks the manuscript into many smaller parts, and it all seems much easier. At least to me it does. Again, just to sum up, these scenes will be separate but more elaborate scene lists of actions and clues. The list contains everything, including the clues I want to happen in the scene when I begin to write it. In the next layer, I'll show you how this outline will then function as a checklist that will prevent me from forgetting to add something to the scene. Okay, so I'm in my Scrivener document, and this is from the novel I'm writing right now. So this is a scene template here, okay? Now I have 3 of the bullet points here. The rest of the scene is down here, but I don't want to give too much away of the story. But this is the way it works. I put down everything in numerical format. You can use bullet points because a lot of times I have to change the numbers. And I make sure that I have everything down that I want to go in the scene. And I do this through all of I lay in all of the scenes in this way. They're just like a list of things I want to be in the scene. Then in the next layer, which is layer 4, is when the actual writing will begin. So at that point, I copy this, and I put it over here in the notes section so that I have it. Then I start writing. So I'll just start writing the scene when Jack and Fiona, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then as I put things into the story, I delete them. Okay, and then this way, by the time I get, and I just keep pushing it down, and by the time I get to the end, these should all be in the scene. This way I know I didn't forget anything. And in the meantime, I have a copy of it over here safely. Okay, I don't want to get too much ahead, but over here in the synopsis, as I get further along in the process, I abbreviate what's happening in the scene so that when I open things in Outlier, it gives me a complete bird's eye view of the whole story. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I forgot to mention the binder side of the Scrivener setup in my strategy. So first let me explain what's on the screen right now. My present novel's binder is on the far left. That one is in the beginning stages. My finished novel entitled Darius, a Vampire Story is in the middle. I have laid the 2 binders side by side so you can see the difference between where I start and where I ultimately end up. If you look closely at my present novel, you can see that I have certain events marked with starred lines during the process of writing. These help me know where I am in the story during this early creation process. On the finished binder to the right, you can see that the story now exists in chapters and in the 4 sections. So this is an example of how a project looks at the beginning and how it ends up. So that's layer 3. Even though I haven't written one paragraph yet, I know the story by this point. I know the subtleties of the story by writing this outline. I have some other ideas for foreshadowing. I know who or what will be a red herring, if I'm using one. I go through all 4 parts of the story and make sure that I sketch in the detailed scene outlines. As I get to the end of the story, I use broader strokes because I know that as the creative writing starts, the ending will be tweaked quite a bit. In my opinion, this process gives everything that I do meaning and purpose right from the beginning. By breaking things down into the 4 sections and then into individual scenes, it also makes the whole manuscript more manageable, at least for me it does. And as I'll point out in the next video, having the list prevents me from forgetting to add things into the scenes. So let me know if anyone is enjoying this or if it's helpful by commenting below. Thanks for watching.